I'm going to welcome you once again to the Active Education Week. For the next 5 days, you're invited to participate in a series of webinars, tasks, online discussions about why and how we can uncover our learners' interests. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Venables, and I've been dedicated to English language teaching since 2001. 10 of those years were in Spain before I moved to Brazil in 2011. That's where I am based right now. I'm here with you tonight from Sao Paulo. Time really does fly. Over the years, I think I've done everything from director of studies, materials writing, teacher education, curriculum design and development. I've taught every level and every age, but I have always been and always will be most interested in language learning and teaching in childhood. And anyone who knows me will probably also tell you how passionate I am about being in the classroom. I think that's where I'm my best version. So I'm back again teaching part-time this year and I'm loving it. But as well as that, I'm really committed to connecting with other ELT professionals to help try and strengthen and grow our community. And that's what I've been aiming to achieve with Active English. So it is such a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. And I'm honored that so many people have signed up for this week. Now, if you haven't already, I'd love you to pop on over to the comments there, the chat box, and let me know. Introduce yourself. Let me know where you're based and a little bit about your teaching context. What are the age of the learners that you work with? Are you working at a language school? Are you in bilingual education? I'd love to know a little bit about where you are joining us from. Now, I want to explain how this week is going to work so that everyone can really make the most of these 5 days. But first of all, I think we should have a look at a little bit of admin. If you're watching this live, you can participate all throughout this session by typing in the chat box. If you have a question, I'm just going to ask you to put a Q in front of that. And I've got someone supporting me here tonight. Rafael's with me. Hello, Rafael. And he's going to be collecting those questions. And we're going to be able to answer a couple at the end of the session. But also, I would love this discussion to jump out of YouTube and into our exclusive WhatsApp group that we have, and we're going to keep the discussion going there afterwards and all throughout this week. That is the place to go if you have insights, doubts, questions, something that you'd like to share. That's where we're going to be. And of course, I'm going to be sending you a follow-up task from this session to the WhatsApp group for you to try before the next webinar. This is our very first Active Education Week. It will be the first of many. And it was created to launch our primary pathway. I've mentioned this before, but I think it's important to remind everyone here that Active English has moved away from offering one-off courses and workshops, what James Taylor calls the vending machine approach. You know, you go up, you get a course, you leave, nothing, no thought to what comes before or what comes after. It's our belief that the most effective teacher development happens gradually, and it's a long-term commitment. And we've been hearing about continuous professional development for years and years, right? And it's never been easier to watch a webinar or take a course. There's an overwhelming number of options available these days for teachers, and that could be wherever you are in any location and on any budget. But I think that perhaps people are taking these in a very isolated way, one at a time, without much thought given to what came before and what will come next. And we're not saying this won't work, but in our experience, it often results in a lot of time and money spent in a very unfocused and incoherent way. So that's why what we would like to offer you instead is a professional development pathway. That's what we are all about this year. And that's why this week is actually a free first step onto a very carefully and considered and directed plan, which we're calling the primary pathway. And as the name suggests, this is specifically for English teachers of primary age learners. And after this week, we'll continue to offer more steps, the next step that continues on from this topic. And every month, in fact, we're going to keep offering a wide variety of professional development activities that you're welcome to participate in. Naturally, this will involve some formal training, but there are plenty of other formats that we believe are important to a teacher's development, including reflection, a space for community discussions, sharing, support and guidance during and after each of these courses. The reason I feel it's important to explain this all to you is so that you understand what we're aiming to achieve with this Active Education Week. We want you to feel like you're able to change something in your teaching practice, not just listen to the webinars and then back to business as usual. That's why this week has a very single focus. One concept for you to understand and some practical ideas that you can apply to your teaching practice immediately, reflect on, and then you have a community to discuss this with. This is the key to really effective teacher development. This is how we're transforming the way we teach English to children. Now, it's been said that effective teachers are kind of like hunters and gatherers of information about each student. Each new discovery can contribute insights to how to work more effectively with your learner. Clearly, it's about much more than just their interests and passions. I know this. We also need to build up a picture of their academic strengths and weaknesses, learning preferences, developmental needs, and so much more. But we're not going to cover all of that this week, nor will we dive into lesson planning. Tonight, I'm kicking off this event by sharing some of the research findings that suggest the importance of addressing students' interests in the classroom. This is principled practice we're talking about here, not just some idea I came up with. And I also want to sort of talk about what happens when we fail to do this. And then I'll give a brief overview about how discovering what our students are interested in, curious about, or needing can solve 3 common problems that young learner teachers, possibly like you, face. And then I'm going to provide you with some suggestions for activities that you can do tomorrow. Okay, and then finally, of course, we've got our next steps. Don't you worry. At the end of this session, I'm going to remind you about exactly what to do next, what's happening, so that you can participate in the follow-up discussions, Q&A, and get your hands on that follow-up task. How does that sound? Let's see who we've got here. Oh, we've got a lot of people from Brazil with me tonight. Oh, look at all of these people. We've got Gislaine. Hello. We've got Ana Rodriguez. Hello. From Campinas. Hello, Astrid from Colombia. Welcome. Welcome. What a wide range of people that you work with there. Another person from Brazil, Mariana. Hello, it's lovely to see you. And of course, Roberta. Hi, Roberta. Virginia. It's really good to see you. Look at what a wide range of people we have here. Lots of different contexts. We've got some language schools. We've got Gabriella. Everybody must know Gabriella from our WhatsApp groups. Working in a school on a bilingual program. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so this is looking really good. I'm really, really happy to have you all joining us this evening. Let's dive in now and have a look at some of the supporting theory, right? And I think this is really important to do. I'm not going to take too long on this. I've got a page of references and further reading for anyone who feels the need to dive further into these topics, and I really recommend you do. I've got some great books. But I think it's really important to touch on this before we have a look at the practical aspects, because too often young learner teaching is seen as something that we do instinctively. And to be honest, there is a lot of instinct involved with it, especially after years of teaching. But we always want to make sure that we're aligning our practice to solid theory research. We want evidence-based research from which to base the decisions that we make in the classroom. So this is the research that I have brought to share with you today that is connected to the topic of this week. You see, interest, what does this have to do with? Well, it's really to do with the student's predisposition for and engagement with a topic or an area of study, right? Experience will teach us some general rules of thumb about students of a certain age. For example, we know most first graders love singing and dancing with the teacher, but This is not always successful with tweens. So there are some things that we can say that we kind of know about students' interests, predispositions, and how they'll engage. Go ahead there and name one thing for me that you can sort of name as a generalization of something that you think most of your learners of a certain age are interested in right now. And you can write your answers in the chat box for me. Okay, so let me hear the age as well. Would be great if you could. So Gabriella has said Play-Doh activities. This is something, yeah, that definitely engages pre-primary learners. You know what? I feel like Play-Doh and getting your hands on things is something that we know engages a lot of learners, even older learners. Okay, here's one from Gislaine that I think is really interesting. My students are interested in Easter right now. I love that she's pulled into something that's happening in the community. So that community activity has triggered a sudden or time specific interest in her learners. So that's really interesting as well. What else have you got for primary learners? Don't forget to leave their age there. Well, interest affects a student's motivation to learn. That's why this is so important. And there is theory underpinning this idea of interest-based differentiation. And these are principles that these are the principles here on the screen that the theorists who propose them. So you can have a look here. When an individual's interest is tapped into, learning is more likely to be rewarding and the student is more likely to become an autonomous learner. That was Bruner who said that way back in the 60s. We can help students discover and pursue their interests, and we can maximize their engagement with learning, their productivity, and their individual talents. And then this third one I love as well. When students feel this sense of flow with their work, they're more likely to work hard, to work in a sustained fashion, and to want to develop the skills necessary to complete the work. And this third one is really, really important. It goes way beyond just having fun. Being interested in something, and you'll probably know this from your own personal lives, when you're interested in something, you can focus much more on it, and you can put in the hard work needed in order to reach mastery of whatever it is that you're doing. Now, among the research, it suggests this importance of addressing students' interest in the classroom are the following. It's that idea of freedom to choose what they want to work on, that agency of what to pursue and the topics to study. There is this interest in, or there is this idea of motivation. A lot of people talk about how interest is deeply connected to motivation, and this idea of it being maintained over time. And of course, student interest, again, student interest is key to ongoing motivation to pursue tasks of increasing complexity. And of course, we know that when students are interested in what they study, there are positive influences on learning, both in the short and the long term. And that's what language learning is all about. We're going to look at that in a minute. But I wanted to just briefly go over this. Again, like I said, if any of these quotes here really like resonated with you or piqued your interest, check out the last slide where I've got my a list of books. And I want to give a quick shout out to Kenya Santos here, one of my collaborators, who is always introducing me to fantastic things to read about education. And she really helped me out a lot in preparation to talk about this topic. She's always helped me out with anything that I want to learn the theory about. She'll always have a book for me. And so thank you very much, Kenya, for your contributions. Wednesday, don't miss Kenya's webinar. She is amazing and really worth listening to. But let's now go on and have a look at some of these challenges that we're facing. And I want to start this by saying that I have the distinct impression that most teachers work with a course book of some kind. I mean, it makes sense, right? The ELT publishing industry is huge, and every school I've ever worked in has adopted a course book, with one exception, and that's the school I'm working for now. We don't have course books. But I wonder if this is true of the group that we have here. Let me know. Do you work with a course book? Write your answer there in the chat box for me. Just a yes or a no. Hi, Natalia. Let's have a look. Are you working with a course book? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Gislaine knows Kenya. Okay, so we've got, I love this. I'm going to pull up Carol's comment here. Hello, Carolina. Using her course book as a guide. This is wonderful. A lot of yeses. Camilla doesn't work with a course book, and neither does Virginia. I wonder if they are private teachers or if they're at an actual school without. This is typically the case. Monica is a classic example of someone who is working with a course book at school but opts not to outside with her private students. Okay, good. Okay, so yes, 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 no, no, very interesting. But most of us do work with a course book, and I completely understand why this happens. I do. I am very critical of course books, a lot of course books, especially for pre-primary, as most of you probably know if you've been following me on social media. But I understand why we need course books. Course books can save you a lot of time, especially when you work with many groups and you have national standards that have to be met. You've got standardized testing, perhaps, that you're accountable for, and you have to provide evidence of learning, and when that evidence of learning for school admins and families, it often continues to be equivalent to pages of a book completed, doesn't it? Unfortunately, but that kind of is the context that we're in, and we have to be very realistic about what it is that we can and can't do. And I think, honestly, many teachers don't have the knowledge or experience that it takes to put together a course from scratch. So course books have their place in our classroom. But the downside of this is, and listen, I wonder if you agree with me when I say this, there is rarely room for student voice and choice in these books, at least in the more traditional books that I know. How many student books do you know that come with blank pages for students to draw whatever they want to? Or how many course books have, I don't know, empty charts for them to brainstorm what they know about a topic of their choice? It's rarely like this. And even when teachers are not restricted by course books, I'm going to be honest here, the most common thing I encounter in forums, staff rooms, in our WhatsApp group is this: what can I do to teach daily routine? In fact, tonight I had a teacher in there, what can I do for Easter? And then as soon as that question is posed, we get this flood of teachers offering suggestions, materials, links, resources, things that have worked for them and their students before. Beautiful ideas. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all for sharing and caring. I just think that maybe we are asking the wrong question. Let me put this another way. I think that instead of looking to a course book or asking a group of teachers or going on Pinterest and going daily routine, we should really look to our learners. And here's why. When we align our lessons with our learners' needs and interests and passions, concerns, problems they have in their real lives, we can potentially solve at least 3 common problems, as I see it. Problems that I bet most of you will have experienced at some point. Tell me if you recognize any of these. My students are not engaging in my lessons. As I love this quote from Carol Ann Tomlinson. She says, engagement is a non-negotiable of teaching and learning. So what do? We invest a lot of time and energy in planning lessons that we hope will be a success with our young learners. All of those teachers who are in those forums asking for help, asking for ideas, care about their lessons. They care about their students. They want this to work. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be bothered. They would just be following a book. But some of us even invest our own money in buying and making resources. Am I right? Is that you? How many of you have invested your own money and spent time at the weekend making these resources for your students? Of course, schools also adopt the latest course book, which promises to provide everything the teacher needs to engage and motivate learners. Let's have a look here. Look at Carolina again. The secret, getting to know them, which is kind of hard for big groups. We have got ideas for you, Carolina. We have got ideas for you to try. This is so important, even with big groups. I can't wait to see what you think of these ideas. And look at all of these teachers who, yes, have spent time at the weekend making materials, spent their own money, hands up there if that's you, making materials. And of course, often, despite all our efforts, the students are completely uninterested in the lesson, and hello classroom management problems. And when I say this to you, I'm not speaking from a place of judgment. I'm speaking from a place of my own experience. And let me tell you about the can-can't lesson that I spent hours preparing. I printed out images. I had all of these ideas that I wanted to do can and can't with different hobbies. Can you play the violin? Can you dance? Can you? And I was in this wonderful space. It was a brinquedoteca. It was this big, beautiful space where I was teaching students from a range of different ages in Brazil, here in Brazil. And I went in with my lesson plan, with all my materials ready to go. And I tell you what, there was a shelf full of action figures of superheroes. And it was impossible to get them to pay attention to me. All they were interested in were these superhero figurines. And, you know, the best decision I made was to throw that lesson plan out the window and follow their interests. We grabbed those superheroes and we listed all of the superpowers that they had, and boy were they interested in learning those words. And then we divided them into superheroes that can and can't according to their superpowers, and we did role plays, and wow. And then I went home, and that weekend I created this project that had all of these different ways of exploring can and can't to do with superheroes and superpowers, and it was a huge success. And it ended up finishing with this wonderful play that the kids put on and we recorded. Huge success. So that for me was a big, big lesson. I wonder if anyone else has had an experience like that before too. So my point here is, before we take advice from others about what we should do to teach whatever topic, I think we need to remember that some of the key motivators for learning are voice and choice. So being able to express your ideas and opinions and wants and interests, and being able to make choices about your own learning. This is really important. These are important motivators for learning, but so is feeling this sense of ownership of what you're working on. And of course, you need content that is personally meaningful to you. And this is all about, you know, finding out what students are interested in. So it's worth taking the time to uncover what our students are interested in and align this with our lesson plans and projects. Or alternatively, let's say you're following a unit of a course book. Take that unit of the course book and find out what students already know about the topic. What do they want to know? What do they want to learn about the topic? And align the unit, the topic of the course book. Make connections to what it is that they're interested in. This is, in my opinion, the best way to motivate and engage our young learners, especially as language learning, because we're talking about primary learners tonight, especially as language learning starts getting harder and expectations start getting higher, right? Which brings me to the next problem. Gente, language learning is hard. Language learning is hard. And they say, oh, it's so easy. Children just pick it up. No, language learning is hard and it requires persistence and long-term commitment. And you know what? We can't play games and draw pictures and sing songs and expect that eventually people are just going to do this and develop mastery of a foreign language. At some point, language learning requires great effort. But you would be wrong if you said that children are afraid of or resistant to working hard to learn something. The problem is that for this to happen, they really need to care about what they're working on. This is a great quote right here. Well, I've actually got a different quote. This is a great quote, but I've got another one. Seymour Papert refers to this idea of children working on something that they care about, that he calls this hard fun. Don't you love that idea? And can't you visualize those students of yours when you've got them, when you've engaged them on a topic and they are like really into it and they're preparing a poster to present to the class and you can see them there and it's tough and they're working hard on it. That's hard fun, you know? It's not just hard and boring. It's hard fun. I love that expression. And this quote here from Michael Resnick, it's from his book, Lifelong Kindergarten. You've got to get that book. It's really good. And he says, too often teachers and educational publishers try to make lessons easier, believing that children want things to be easy. But it's not the case. Most children are willing to work hard and eager to work hard so long as they're excited about the things that they're working on. And this became just so personally real to me when I saw my son in 2020 just completely disengaged from the online classes he was getting at his old school, not the new school. He's changed schools. Terrible. Really, really bored and started failing all of his subjects. And the feedback that I got from the school was that he was lazy and undisciplined. But it didn't make sense to me because I saw him after class go down and sit in our garden and look up YouTube videos to learn how to solve the Rubik's Cube. The Rubik's Cube. I don't know how to do a Rubik's Cube. And he taught himself how to do it. And he worked on it for ages. And then I just enrolled him in this there's this fantastic guy in Sao Paulo who does woodworking classes for children. And this guy has this amazing approach. He says, what do you want to make? And the children can pick anything. And the Eloy decided he wanted a samurai sword made of wood. And my goodness, he really dedicated himself and invested himself. And the feedback that I was getting from his woodwork teacher was the exact opposite of what I was getting from his school teachers where he was failing. The difference here was his level of interest and investment in what it was that he was learning. Now, remember, Eloy was not just learning about cubes and swords while he was deeply invested in these projects. He was also learning other skills. He was learning about algorithms, problem solving, muscle memory, fine motor skills. Woodwork involved defining the task, making a plan of action, deciding how to proceed, refining and responding accordingly as the work evolved. It was so much learning taking place in those two projects of his. So when people work on what they're interested in, they're more likely to work harder on it and for longer. But in addition, this investment can pay off with new knowledge, mindsets, and skills. And isn't that what we want for our language learners? Isn't that what it takes to learn another language? Have you experienced anything like this in your life? Let me know. Let's bring up. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Things that they're interested in. That's lovely. Let's have a look at some more of these comments. Long-term commitment to language learning. That's absolutely true. And Solly, I think, is the art teacher, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Solly? Who knows all about getting children engaged and focused and this idea of hard fun in an art class. Carol, thanks so much for all of your contributions here. Children wanting independence to work on their own. We don't give them enough, I think, in language classes. So what do you think about this? Have you had an experience in your life as a learner where you have been so interested in something that's been really hard, but you've worked on it and worked on it because you're just so passionate about it? While people are answering there, I'm going to go on to the third problem, okay? Um, this next problem, language teaching has become about way more than just memorizing vocabulary and grammar. Am I right? I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. It is no longer about lexical lists and flashcards and what is this and what is this and what is this. And I mean, given the rise of the emphasis on 21st century skills, it's not all surprising that we've also seen an increase in the number of course books in schools that use problem-based learning, project-based learning. We've seen maker spaces entering schools, the idea of the Genius Hour, and other initiatives that are trying to inject a little bit more student agency into our language learning programs. But for any of these to work, we really need to rethink our approach to planning and start putting the child at the center right from the beginning. Everyone from Piaget to Montessori, from the educators in Reggio Emilia to the researchers at Project Zero at Harvard University, I mean, they're all advocating for an approach that recognizes children as builders of knowledge, not as passive recipients. And this is not likely to be a new concept for anyone here. I know that. Student-centered learning and teaching, the learner is the protagonist. Yes, we've heard it all before, but there still seems to have been so little change. And it begins with where we find inspiration from our lessons. So if you find yourself moving on to Unit 3 of the course book and it's all about daily routine, instead of asking, what can I do to teach daily routine? I'm going to suggest that you try something different. I'm going to suggest you ask instead, what do my students need or want to learn that is connected to their daily routine? Now, what are you about to start working on in your context? Can you try and formulate a question related to your next unit of work? In fact, let's just start with this. What is your next unit of work related to? Write that in the comments. Is it Easter? Is it, what are you about to start working on? Parts of the body or animals? What have you got for me? Okay, so here we go. Camilla. Camilla is going to be working on plants. Now, Camilla, you could go into our WhatsApp group after this meeting and you could say, does anyone have any good ideas for lessons about plants for 7-year-olds? And you're likely going to get a whole lot of different answers. But what I suggest that you do instead is, first of all, ask, what do my students need or want to know about plants? Or you could even ask, what do my students already know about plants and what are they still curious to learn? Because plants, think about it, plants could go in so many different directions and it could be incredibly boring or incredibly interesting depending on who and what you're teaching. So let's have a look at some of these other ones. We've got Julia here. Hi, Julia. Julia is going to be working on family members. Can anyone formulate a question that Julia, instead of asking, what can I do to teach the family members in our group, what question could Julia ask herself? And while while she is doing that, I'm going to bring up this one. While you're answering that, how is light created? Oh my goodness. How is light created? What a great driving question. So a student has actually brought this up in Influent, and Sylvia is going to be using this question to create a unit of work on. That's a really nice idea. So I think you obviously have freedom to depart from the course book that you're using. Here's another good one. Anna Rodriguez, All About Me. Classic theme that we've seen a million times before, isn't it? Can anyone reword this or create a question that Anna could ask herself about this? Here we go. So Ghislaine's got this question here. Why do they need to learn about plants? Yeah. What kind of contact do they have in their everyday lives already with plants? Where do they see plants? Are plants important? What plants are important for them? Another one from Gisele. Why do we need plants? Exactly. That's really good. Oh, here's another one. Why are plants important? And most importantly, why are plants important for their lives? How can we make a connection between because plants are important for so many reasons, right? What we want to do is we want to start off, make this connection between something that's important for them. Oh, look at this one from Sol about family members. How do you celebrate the birthdays of your family members? I think this is a really interesting question because it's going to dig into or connect with a topic. Remember before when we were making assumptions about things that children are interested in or enjoy? I think celebrating birthdays is something that's really important for children. I know a lot of adults who don't like celebrating their birthday, but it's very rare to find a child who doesn't like celebrating their birthday. So connecting this family members theme to celebration seems to be a really clever idea to me. Look at this one from Catalina. What is it that I love about me? Oh, isn't that nice? And finding out what children love about themselves. This is such lovely sharing going on here. Here we go. Jess is suggesting to take them to the garden, ask them what they see, and ask them if they think plants are important. It's a really nice ideas, people. Thank you so much for contributing. So this is my sort of suggestion to you. If you have a unit of work, before you go to Pinterest, before you go to that group, before you go to ask any of the teachers that you work with about what that has worked for them, first of all, think about why is this topic even important to my students? What are my students interested in that can connect with this theme? And once you've found that out, it becomes, then you can go to your group and then you can ask them better questions. Let me just show you a real story of something that literally has just happened to me. So the other day, a dear, wonderful teacher in our community, Deborah, who's always participating actively there. Do you all know Deborah? She's fantastic, and she's just started working with children. And I've loved her participation in this group. And she came to us the other day with the classic question because she has to send home themes to the parents in advance. So in April, she wanted to send home vocabulary, sort of let them know what they were going to be working on. It was vocabulary related to daily routine, clothing, and toys was what she was thinking of. And I pulled her into the private messages and we had a chat about this. And of course I said, Deborah, I know you're doing free play with your children. What are they interested in? How can we connect? How can we draw on their interests and create a unit of work in April based on what they're interested in? And she goes, but they're interested in so many different things. And she started listing things off. And one of the things that she said were the baby dolls. They love the baby dolls. And there it is, right there. The wonderful world of babies. So I helped her develop this these key concepts for her to work on in April and to share with the families. And look how this transformed. Look at the transformation here. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's gone from being vocabulary related to daily routine, clothing and toys to this month we will explore the world of babies and the different aspects of their routines, such as playing, eating and bathing. The children will be invited to participate in a series of group and individual activities that integrate skills and language naturally through songs, stories, sensory and creative play. And these will help the children become familiar with language for daily routine, clothing and familiar objects connected to self-care. Look at that. The language focus is still the same, but we have been able to connect this to their developmental needs and their interests. So delivering this content is going to be so much easier for Deborah because she knows this is something that they're already attracted to. All she needs to do is bring out the babies and they're going to be, rather than the other way around, her competing for attention with her set of flashcards and all the children are off there wanting to play with other things. This is what I'm talking about. I think this is exactly where we need to be. So now Deborah can go back to that group and she could ask, does anyone have any ideas of how I can, of games and activities that I can play related to caring for babies and for 3-year-olds? You know, so this is something, I think, this is where I'm going with this. How do you go about discovering your learners' interests? This is what we're going to be having a look at in the next section. But before we go to the next section, what I would like you to do, let's take a break. Let's think about everything that I've just shared with you. And what I want you to do is share an insight from tonight's session so far in the comments there. And I'm going to pull up some here. What is something that has resonated with you perhaps, or an insight that you have as you've read the other comments from people or listened to what I've been saying? Maybe it's something that you're already doing that you'd like to share with the group. Maybe it's a question that you'd like me to answer in the WhatsApp group later. Write that in the chat box now for me, please. And while people are doing that, I'm going to put a quote up here on this screen. This is one of my favorite from tonight, I think. And I'm going to actually get camera ready just in case anyone wants to take a screenshot right now to share on social media, because I'm tired of appearing in social media with my mouth open. So if you'd like to take a screenshot, now is your chance. And you know what, folks? I would absolutely love if you shared screenshots. I'm kidding. You can post photos of me looking weird on your social media. I would love this idea to get out there. I would love for us to share this sort of journey that we're going on together with the wider ELT community. If you are participating in this week-long event, please share it in your social media. Tag me. You can also use the hashtag ActiveEdWeek. There we go. Just put that in the comments. Let's spread these ideas to the wider teaching community. It would be absolutely wonderful to see you there on my Instagram. And let's have a look at what you've shared, some of these insights. Amanda, hard fun. I love that. That's probably my, when I read that for the first time, I just thought, that's it. That's it. It's having this idea of play, right? I know Amanda loves play-based learning. And this idea that, this misconception that play is something easy, you know, it's children's work. Children work when they are playing. And this concept of hard fun really did it for me as well. It's perfect. I love this insight from Sylvia from Influent. Excellent. Here's something from Gabriella. She's got some ideas for upcoming lessons, I see. Lovely. Okay, folks, let's go on to these practical ideas now. I want you, I don't expect anyone to do all of these ideas, but I wanted to provide a wide variety of things that you can do with your learners, depending on your context, your personality, the groups that you have. And I want to start off this section by saying that really what we need to be doing is making opportunities to communicate individually with our learners. We need to really try and draw out from them information about their interests, their dreams, their aspirations. We need to observe them working individually, working in small groups, in the class as a whole. I think observation of our students is something that we forget to do in that rush from one activity, one lesson stage to another. We forget to take a step back and observe them and write down some of these observations. And there's one more thing that I wanted to add here. Really, it's about creating opportunities to learn from parents or guardians and community members about what they know about our students too. So this is something else to keep in mind. But first of all, you folks probably know me. Of course, I'm going to start with relationships. Relationships first, relationships always. Teacher-student relationships are the foundation to what we do in the classroom. They're the foundation for learning. When you understand and know your learners, when you've established a healthy relationship with them, that's when they are willing and they willingly and easily open up and volunteer information about the things that really matter to them. You know, we shouldn't take for granted, I think, that these relationships will just happen organically. We need to invest in relationship building with our students, just like we do with people in other areas of our lives, right? And speaking of which, I need to call my mum. So here are just 3 very simple ideas I want to share with you of things that you can do tomorrow to start working on the relationship with your students, okay? The first one is get them to write 3 things that they wish that you knew about them. And this is something that you can let them know that they can do in L1, and you can also let them know that these will not be shared with anyone, right? That they can trust you, that this is just between you and them. And you can even make this a regular thing in your classroom. If you have a little box on your desk, and you can make that, if anyone wants to send you a little note about something that's on their mind, something that's bothering them, something that they want you to know, you can have that box on your desk and you can look through them regularly. And you can do, to kickstart this, what you can do is do it yourself, set an example, model this for the students by sharing with your students 3 things that you wish they knew about you. It's a great way to start building these relationships. Who likes that idea? The next one is called, I made this name up, okay? It's called You Know I Know. Because when I first started getting into this idea of like really looking at who my students were and getting to know what made them tick, I had a lot of students. So I actually had a document with all of their names, and next to their names, I had a column for me to write down something so I would remember that fact about them. I knew I had to write it down. My memory's not great. I knew who was a big Flamengo football team fan, you know, and I knew whose mum was pregnant, and I knew who spent the weekend at their grandma's, and I kept a record of these things. But pretty soon I realized it wasn't enough for me to know about my students to build this relationship with them. They needed to know that I knew and that I remembered them. So then I put a 3rd column on this document, and in that 3rd column I would tick it off when I had followed up with them. Flamengo won! Or how's your little baby brother? Has he been born yet? Or did you see the dogs at the weekend? I would let them know that I remembered what they had told me. When they had volunteered and shared personal information about me, I remembered that. I remembered them. That is how you start building relationships with students. And that was a game changer for me. And then the last one, this last one is the easiest one. And if you are one of those teachers who has huge numbers of students in your classroom, and this previous one that I just described was when I had up to 24 pre-primary learners in my classroom. And I had 5 groups, so it's a lot of students. So this can work, and this should work. You should make this a priority in your classroom. The easiest way to do this is by greeting each student as they come in at the door. So simple. Look them in the eye, use their name, smile. Let them know that you see them. That is just such a simple way that you can start building relationships. You know, if you feel that there is no other space in your classroom for anything else because of time, just greet them at the door. Get down to their level, look them in the eye, smile, tell them how happy you are to see them there that day. Give that a go and let me know how you get on. I hope you like that idea. Look at this from Jess. Lovely idea, Jess. Wonderful. Sol has some really nice insights there to share as well. And this one here as well from Jess. They feel special when we remember the things that they like. I do too. I really do. I love it. I love when people remember things about me. I love when people remember my birthdays. I think just like Gabriella, this really does make a huge difference. Oh, Gabriella, I think Gabriella's tried this. I think that's what Gabriella's saying there, that she's tried it and it's made a huge difference. Okay, so that is relationships first. But let's have a look at some more ideas now. This next idea is about observing children. And in this wonderful book, which I've written the reference for in this last page, if you can get your hands on this book, it's a wonderful read. It's all about play. And these are a couple of questions that I've adapted from that book for you to do when you're observing children during free play or choice time. Now, if you aren't creating space in your lesson for free play or for free choice, do it tomorrow. Please, seriously, set aside, depending on the age of your students, it might be as little as 10 minutes, 15, maybe 20 minutes, depending on how long you have in your class, but just put out some activities that you've been working on in your class with them up until now. Put them at a place where they can see them and reach them, and let everyone have a choice about what it is that they would like to play with, how they would like to play with it, and the language that they'd like to use while they play, and just observe them. You are going to learn so much. This is something that's come straight from Reggio Emilia. This idea of observing, listening. They talk all the time about listening to the child. When given free time to draw, what objects or scenes are your children drawing? When given free choice, what is each child drawn to? Get a list of names. Write down things that you're observing. If you have a school library or a collection of books, what books do they pick? What do they talk about in conversations with you or your peers or their peers? And what activities does the child seem most engaged in or least engaged in? Take the time to observe children. Think about this. Think about what you've seen in the past, what you've experienced in the group. Again, this can be harder. It sounds so obvious, but I know how hard this is when you are racing from activity to activity in your lesson. I know this is tricky, but tomorrow, this is what I suggest you do. Take time to observe them. Really look and listen to your children and to see what you discover about them that you didn't know before. Okay. Now we're getting deeper. Now we're getting more technical. This is something that if you are ready for this, I recommend that you give this a go. This is called the Traction Planner. This planner is designed to focus our attention on the strengths that a student brings to a unit of study. Okay, this helps you sort of envision practical and concrete ways to increase the relevance of that unit of study for your students. Now, I'm going to send you a copy of this so that you can take a good look at it. I love this because it really encourages teachers to reflect on what they think and believe about a unit of work. And it gives you a lens for your planning. And that lens is very student-centered. It's all about your students. And of course, it can be even, depending on the age of your students. You could get the students involved in this and helping you complete it. basically what you need to do with this handout is to identify the goals of the unit of study that you're going to start, the core understanding or knowledge or skills that you want them to learn, or that you expect that they will learn by the end of the unit. And then you're going to build new learning based on student strengths, okay, related to the goals of the study, of the unit of study. And then consider the connections from the goals to students' everyday life, their interests, and the importance of this topic now and for the future. And then finally, you can identify students' needs and learning. This is what's going to be the hardest part of the unit for them, really, and use this information from 2 or 3 areas to support students' needs and learning in the hardest part of this unit. It's really, really interesting. And I'm going to send it to you so you can have a go with this. Again, maybe you're not ready for this just yet. Maybe you're going to try out some of the easier activities, but this is for anyone who feels ready to do this or may be interested in giving this a go in the future. Okay. This next one is a nice, easy one, I think. I'm going to recommend that this actually happens outside of school, in L1, which in my context, for example, is Portuguese, right? Their first language. This is something that I would not use with pre-primary. This is something I would use with primary age learners. If your students have a high level of proficiency, this is easily something that you can do in English. But when you really want to dig in and first discover what your students are interested in for the first time, I think this would be an appropriate moment to get them to use Portuguese, so that you can make sure you're getting really genuine answers in response to this survey that you do with them. So I've put lots of questions here. What's your favorite subject in school? What's your least favorite subject in school? What do you do? What do you plan to do when you graduate high school? How do you view homework? What do you want to be when you grow up? All of these kinds of questions can help reveal a lot of things about your learners that are going to be really useful for you when you dig in and start thinking about what you're going to be planning. Woo! Lots of questions there that you can take a look at later. And then this brings me to the end now. I would like to share with you just 5 great books for you to read. Just want to make sure that I've got one more there that I haven't put on that I'll share in the WhatsApp group after this. But take a screenshot of this if you like, so that you can think about getting your hands on a copy of one of these. And I want to end tonight's session by saying that, this is another quote that I absolutely love. Students need teachers who intentionally create a learning environment in which students' presence and voices matter. This is from another book that Kenya recommended I read, and I absolutely am in love with this book. It's called I'm Listening. And it's this quote that I'm going to end my session on, because this is your challenge for this week. This week, I want you to be that kind of teacher who intentionally creates a learning environment where students can be seen and heard and their interests matter, and learning becomes something that is really relevant to them. Learning English suddenly becomes something that's really relevant to their lives. Okay, folks, this brings us to the end. I want to thank you all for being here. It's been wonderful to be able to share and interact with you on StreamYard. I'm really glad to have used this platform. As you know, on Wednesday we have Kenya, and then on Friday we have Rose and Stephanie. If you can join in live for this, that would be wonderful to keep showing up here. But don't forget to show up for our conversations in the WhatsApp group. I'm going to head there now, and I'm going to be sharing there your challenge to do tomorrow before Wednesday. I hope you're all up for it, and I'm going to say goodbye, good night, thank you so much, and I will see you online again soon. Bye-bye.